Hello everyone, so my name is Errol and I'm very happy to be talking to you today just to share a few experiences about primarily my brother David and just to share a bit about his life and his death and a bit about his background. So I'm very happy to be doing that today. David was my eldest brother and there's 4 of us in our family. He was the eldest and I'm the youngest. And he was a man with Down syndrome. So he died about 18 months ago. And so I really just wanted to share just a few different things just to hopefully inspire you and to share so many of the positives of his life, what he went through, what we went through as a family. So when David died, he was 61, so that surprises many people. From that generation, they didn't expect a Down syndrome child to live very long, perhaps to their 30s, their 40s. So actually the fact that he lived to 61 is amazing. He had 1 or 2 close shaves, literally with death in his earlier years because of his various health conditions. But as I said, he lived to 61, which is great. So one of his last big events was his 60th birthday when he was very frail, but that was a very special family event. So we thank God for that. Just to wind the clock back to the beginning, so David was born in 1959 and my mother at that time was just a young woman, probably 26, 25, so a young woman. And obviously she had no idea. So my parents had David. And I remember her telling us it was only really kind of like maybe when he was 18 months, 2 years old, they went to the doctor because they noticed like he wasn't really developing the way a baby should, and they had no idea. And I remember my mother telling us the words of the doctor. So the doctor said, "The boy's a Mongol." So that's it's very that sentence always stays with us. The boy's a Mongol. So it sounds offensive to us, but that was the language of the day, that was the terminology of the day. And it was from that point that they knew that he had Down syndrome. So that was the start of a long, long journey, basically a journey looking after him until he died at the age of 61. As a child, in his 20s, in his 30s, David was fit and active. He was very sociable, he loved parties, he loved all of his family and friends, he loved football, he loved going out, he was active, but in the background there was always health issues. He was always vulnerable to this, that, whatever. I guess one of the main milestones was when the doctors told my parents that he had a hole in the heart. So that was a big shock for them. I was just a child then, so I didn't fully understand, but obviously that would have been a big shock to them. And probably raising lots of question marks in their mind. How long will he live, etc., etc. But he carried on with the love and support of my parents. They looked after him and they loved him. It wasn't easy, but as I said, it was their love and protection which gave him a life of 61. We had a blast as children. We had lots of comedy moments. We were very close, the 2 of us. Lots of jokes just between the 2 of us. Lots of comedy, which was good because most Down syndrome children, they have a cracking sense of humour. They can sense things that we can't, which is really special. Quite often by himself, David would laugh to himself. And it was really very touching to watch. He would, it's almost a bit like a little video playing in his mind. And he's having a whale of a time, laughing and joking, whatever's going on in his mind. And that was very beautiful. So I guess towards his 40s and in his 50s, obviously he became more frail. His health, more and more conditions developed. I guess the main ones were his cardiac problems. I think whenever it was in his 50s, the doctor said it's time to put a pacemaker in. So that was quite a big milestone as well. That was kind of like the first time he went on the general anaesthetic. So but God brought us through it. It was obviously there was risk factors, but he came through fine. So that helped him a lot, that pacemaker. As the years went on, in his 50s, obviously things deteriorated, particularly with his eyes. And gradually, to be honest, he went blind, more or less blind. He had quite a few operations on his eyes. And that became very hard for the people caring for him at his care home. But as I said, that's all fine. So it was all part of the journey I wanted to share with you today. His long journey, all of his sufferings, but so many joys as well. A great privilege to watch my parents look after him, especially when my father passed away, which was nearly 20 years ago now, and my mother kind of like caring for him single-handedly. She had one stroke, but even after that she recovered, and then she moved on to continuing to care for him. So at times it was very hard to watch, very painful to watch, but she did it with love and she did it with care. And that for me is very, very beautiful and a great privilege. So David's relationship with his father was always very special. Father and son were very, very close, and they were both devoted to each other. Dad always dressed him up in really nice clothes, going to church on Sunday together. Then they would go to the parish hall for a drink. Every Tuesday, every Friday was a day to go to the newsagent to buy a drink and a football magazine. So he led a full and active life, which is great, which is the way it should be. Everyone loved him. He loved dancing. He loved music. He loved Match of the Day, which was all great. And as I said, all of the family members all loved him. I think for me personally, because of David, we grew up with mixing and knowing lots of other children with disabilities and with Down syndrome, which was great and a great privilege. So that was always part of our lives. The Down syndrome children, they're all very different in their ways. Some are very noisy and boisterous. David was very, very quiet, but they're all great. They're all great, and I'm very grateful for that privilege to grow up with them. And so that was always part of our childhood. I think there was one year, whenever it was, maybe, what year was it now? Maybe 2003 or 2002, he became very ill. Basically, lots of fluid built up around his heart, and it was very serious. It was very serious, obviously because of all his pre-existing conditions and the hole in the heart. So it was a time of crisis. I remember my mother, my father being but as cool as cucumbers. My mother never left him. He didn't get better. I think there was some issue with what kind of like the doctors said, and maybe they didn't get it quite right, which is no problem. And then suddenly one night he was rushed into hospital and loads of fluid built up around his heart. So we went to the hospital, and Mum was there just by his bedside, and she was as cool as a cucumber. She just said to me, almost as a matter of fact, we've called the priest, and the priest has anointed him, because basically they were going to drain loads of fluid from his heart. So that's a big risk. It's a big risk for anyone who's healthy, but for a child like David, that's a big risk. But thank God everything went okay. He recovered. It took time, but he recovered. And I learned a lot from that. It's God saying, his time has not yet come. There's still more to his journey. So, which is great. So basically, things happen according to God's timescale, not according to our timescale. My mum always said to me, be nice to him. We don't know how long he will live. So that always stuck in my mind. So as I said, he made a good recovery, which is great. He travelled a lot. He was able to go to Goa, where we come from, 3 times. So although he did get sick when he went there, but still he had 3 great holidays in Goa. All of his family love him there, and he was devoted to his family there. And it shows how healthy he was that actually he was able to travel all of the way there. He was in the Boy Scouts, so they had a special Boy Scouts group for children with disabilities, and he really loved doing that. dressed up in his Boy Scouts uniform and taking part in marches, Remembrance Day, meeting the mayor, etc., etc. So that was all good. It was all good. So as I said, a full and active life. One year he actually won an award, Boy Scout of the Year, which he was very, very proud of. We were very proud of. He got a really good commendation. It said leadership and other things don't come easily to him, but he's tried his best and he's got a cracking sense of humour, which summed it up all perfectly. Another important milestone, a very happy one. So 2016, my wife and I, we got married. Why she would choose to marry someone like me, I don't know, but that's, bless her, she did. So we got married in October 2016. And I always said, if I get married, I want David to be my best man. So, and it happened. I got married at a relatively kind of like older age, but still he was my best man. And it was great, himself and my nephew Patrick. And he was really, really proud to be best man. He understood completely what was going on. He was looking forward to it. He made a speech, which was great. Someone read the speech for him, and because he's softly spoken and people can't always understand what he's saying, someone else then read it out, and it was very, very touching. His speech came first before we had our lunch, before we did anything else, because he needs to come first. And as I said, it was a really special day. I felt very proud to have him as my best man. At the start of my wedding speech, he actually came first. I spoke about his life. I said, look, he's here. He needs to come. Look how proud we are, everything he's gone through, but he made it to this day. He danced and he danced and he danced at the wedding. I got a bit worried because he's quite frail. I hope he's going to be okay. But he danced and he danced and he danced, which was great. It was a palaver to get him ready that day, but that's fine. It always takes a long time, but that's fine. It's no problem. When we were on the altar, he knew exactly what was going on with the rings. So it was very special. So I thank God for that. And as I said from the beginning, if I were to get married, which I'm glad I did, I wanted David as my best man. So just to tell you a bit about David's life last week on earth, because not to be morbid, not to depress you, but it's actually very beautiful. So one day in November 2019, I got a call from his carer to say that they were in hospital and that I need to come straight away because the doctors are quite worried about him. So I wanted to tell you about actually the journey in the taxi to the hospital. Obviously, my mind was spinning with lots and lots of things. But I think one of the main things in my mind was actually, will he be dead or alive when I get there? But God is very good. So God gave him one final week on earth, which me and my sister spent with him. And it was really powerful. I'll never forget. So he was admitted to hospital on that Wednesday. And from the beginning, we knew it was quite serious, the illness that he had. Kind of like his lungs were under attack, his heart was already weak, his kidneys were failing. And then kind of like within 1 or 2 days, they said, we need to move him into palliative care, which is fair enough. They said, poor boy, don't put him through intensive care, all of that. Poor boy, he doesn't need that, he doesn't deserve that. So life turned a bit upside down. We were actually very blessed, very lucky because it was COVID times. But because of his Down syndrome, we were allowed to be with him. So for 1 week, my sister spent every day with him and I spent every night with him. And that's something I'll never forget. It was obviously it wasn't easy at times, but looking back now, it was incredibly beautiful and very powerful. It's a great privilege to watch someone die. It's a great privilege just to be with him in his final week on earth. Obviously, it's very sad, it's very traumatic, can be traumatic, especially when it was all over. Then it all hits you, but during that week, basically, you're too tired actually to your normal emotions maybe become a bit different. But I spent every night with him. Most of those nights were difficult and hard nights. Quite often he was agitated, sleepless, restless. But it's fine, it's all part of the journey. We never left him alone for 1 minute, as I said, which is really special. My sister all day and myself all night. After a few days, when the doctor said we'll move to palliative care, gradually they switch off the machines, so the beeping on some of the machines stops and things become more quiet, things become more peaceful. The end is coming. We don't know when it will come, but it's coming. And we're gradually preparing for that, and we're keeping vigil by his bedside. So he died on the 1st of December. As I've told many people, my family and friends, I really sensed something different on that day. There was sunlight pouring through the window and bright winter sunshine pouring down through the window onto his bed, onto his pillow. I believe that was God's light. And as I said, I sensed something very different on that day, the 1st of December. His breathing became shallower, and the team, the hospital team, the chaplain, everyone, they were all great. They said, this is, it sounds like he's coming towards the end of his life. So that day, around about 5 o'clock, he passed away. And as I said, that's actually, for me personally, a great privilege. All my life, I had said to myself, I want to be there at his last moment. It's just really, really important for me as part of the grieving process, as part of my journey with him as his brother. And God answered my prayer. God gave it to me on a plate. Literally, I'd just gone out to the hospital ward corridor to do something, whatever. And then I came back and returned to my place in the chair by his bedside. And he took his last breath. And it was so gentle and so peaceful. We had to check with the nurse, just be sure had he gone or not. That's how peaceful it was. So it's very beautiful. In addition, on that day, because it was the 1st of December, they were actually putting up the Christmas tree in the ward, and they actually coincidentally put it outside his window, so he was in an isolation room. So it got dark about 3:30, and when he died at 5 o'clock, the light from the Christmas tree was pouring through that window and straight onto his head, onto his pillow. And again, I believe that's the light of Christ, especially at the start of Advent and looking towards Christmas. I wanted to talk about faces because preparing for this talk, David's face was really, really beautiful. As I said, he died when he was 61, but he had the face of a little boy, which is really, really special, really beautiful. Basically, like the man, like the boy, he didn't grow up. So very often you'll see with Down syndrome children, they have the face of a child, which is so beautiful. And we need to take a step back and remember that and not forget that. Jesus taught us, to enter into the kingdom of heaven, you need to be like a child. You need to have the innocence of a child, which is what David had and is a great gift to us. Faces are very, very powerful. When I look at his face, it's almost like a prayer, his innocence. You'll probably see some photographs, but just to see his innocent face, it's almost like a medicine, really, to look at him, and it brings you joy, brings us joy. Another reason why I'm sitting here today, there's a very, very sad, very dark, tragic side to this story as well. You may know, you may not know, most of the babies with Down syndrome today are aborted, probably 90% or something. In addition, it's actually legal to do that up to birth. So if I'm a mother and I'm carrying a Down syndrome child, I could abort today if the baby is due today. So that's very, very sad. It's very tragic. And so I spend a lot of my time scratching my head. How have we come to this? What is our world like, our country? What on earth is going on? I told you all about his innocence. I told you all about his life, how much we loved him, how his face brought joy to everyone. But yet most of them don't get to be born. So please spend some time reflecting on that, praying on that. we can change things and we can change the law. Surely you don't believe that it's right for that to take place, not only for Down syndrome up to 9 months, but also for, I think, cleft palate, club foot, which is just as bad. Another question would be, how do we change society's perspective about disability, about Down syndrome? Because the perspective needs to be changed. I believe it is changing. I think you've probably seen quite often you see people with Down syndrome disabilities on television. There's the actor called The Midwife, who everyone is very endeared to. Campaigners for Down syndrome. It's becoming more common, which is great. I hope and I pray society will see all of that and they'll come to realise, actually, these children are so special, they bring so much, what harm are they doing? And yet it's legal to abort up to the last moment. Part of the issue is most people don't actually know that fact. Maybe they just assume it's 24 weeks, they don't realise maybe it's up to birth. So it's a question of educating people, just spreading the message, letting people know what the truth is. Yes, so just to finish off, what have I learned from his life? I think to myself, actually, what would our lives have been without him? So there's 4 siblings, imagine if he had been born without Down syndrome, how different our lives would have been. All of those experiences would not have been there. Basically, the child is a child from heaven, so we need to look after them, to protect them, cherish their lives, and as I said, pray and hope one day that the law will change, because it will one day, because God can move mountains. So thank you for listening.